Over 4 decades, Aberdeen has built deep relationships throughout emerging market economies. And each episode of our Emerging Markets Equity podcast is your chance to eavesdrop on an agenda-setting conversation between me, Nick Robinson, and some of our brightest minds, figuring out the opportunities in key emerging markets. Search for the Emerging Markets Equity podcast from Aberdeen. That's ABRDN, wherever you get your podcasts.
Stocks for beginners.
So I would love for you to go to your boss or the person responsible for giving you a raise tomorrow and ask them, I really would like to provide more for my family and I'd like to earn more income. I'm not asking you for a raise, but what I'd love to do is I'd like to ask you is, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What kind of person do I need to become to move at the next level where I'm at so I can earn more money? Because if they knew that, they would be doing it already, but they don't have a plan for earning more money.
Hi, and welcome back to Stocks for Beginners. I'm Phil Muscatello. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Financial independence can seem out of reach for so many in the community. Change is hard, but it can be achieved. Joining me today is Louis Barajas. Hello, Louis.
Hey, Phil, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Louis Barajas is CEO of International Private Wealth Advisors and business manager for some of the most iconic Latin artists and executives in the entertainment and sports industry. He's also one of the expert coaches on Opportunity Knocks, a TV reality show that just premiered on PBS Passport. Anyway, just to get started, we'll get to the TV program shortly, but tell us about your childhood and growing up in East LA.
Yeah, well, for most people who don't know where East LA is considered a barrio, right? And it's a place where a lot of Latinos live in the United States. My parents are Mexican immigrants. They came to the United States very young, had me very young. And my dad was a blue-collar worker who back in 1971 lost a couple jobs and looked towards his 11-year-old son to say, he looked at me because I spoke English. And he said, son? And I said, yes, Dad. I go, I'm going to start this business. He took all the money that he had and bought a welding machine and created an ornamental iron business that's doing like window guards and fences and whatever. And so my dad and I took a bus to downtown Los Angeles, filled out an application for a business license. And that's how he got started. And that's how I became, at 11 years old, a CFO for my dad's business, right? Who knows? I had no idea. And just another quick little story. And in that community, there weren't a lot of people who were professionals. A lot of people, there was no access to financial planning advice or accounting advice. 2 years later, the IRS showed up at my dad's office and said, Mr. Barajas, you haven't filed business tax returns for the last couple of years. And my dad looked at me and asked me what they were saying. I translated for him. And then I asked the lady, what are tax returns? And I said, is there a book that I can read to complete tax returns? And she said, yes. Now, in East Los Angeles, the heart of where most Mexican Americans live in Southern California. And as of last night and as of 40 years ago, there were no bookstores there. So my dad drove me like 15 miles to another location, bought me a tax book. Back then, Phil, they had no internet. So I went to the local post office to get all the tax forms. At the age of 13, I filed my first Schedule C self-employed tax return for my dad. And at the age of 15, we got audited for that return, believe it or not. And I won the audit. But so that's how I got started in financial planning. And that's where I came from, that community.
It's amazing, though, that generation, that immigrant mentality of that generation was just to work hard. There was no financial planning really as such. There was no investing, I'm assuming. But it's like some immigrants come into the community and they've got this plan that they're just going to work and work and work and make life better for their kids. Was that what it was like for you?
They don't have a choice, right? They don't have a choice. They don't come. My dad had an education from Mexico from the 6th grade. My mom got pregnant with me at age 15, had me at 16. Wonderful parents, just the most kind, loving, honest. What I got from them was just hard work. I remember my dad cutting himself with when he was working on the iron, and went to the house, wrapped himself in with some Band-Aids, went back to work, right? And so every time I see an employee of mine who wants to not show up at work because they have a headache, I always kind of giggle at, like, my dad, who would laugh at them probably. Just a lot of hard work. They taught me that. But, luckily that their children got educated, right? And from there, I realized that my dad needed more help. And I realized that education was probably the key to helping him. And that's how I kind of moved forward.
Yeah, try telling young people that these days, huh? About how work used to be. So you became interested in financial matters from there. How did it develop from that point onward as you got older and as you became educated? I mean, what was your education?
Yeah, so I asked my dad. Well, after the audit, we got audited from the IRS, and I think the lady felt really bad for us, but had a no change audit. I mean, my dad was living, talk about paycheck to paycheck, day to day, really. And I made a commitment to my dad that I'd get a lot of financial information. I ended up going to UCLA, got accepted to UCLA. And then from there, I went and got my master's in business and MBA and in finance. And I said it when Peter Drucker was there. Most people may not remember who Peter Drucker, but he was a great professor. And I went through the whole certified financial planning program back in 1985, 86. And as far as I know, Phil, I'm the first Latino in the United States to become a certified financial planner. And that's how I got started. Now, I went directly into financial planning. Don't want to mention the company who actually taught me a lot about financial planning, but I started helping people in my community. And one of the things I was taught is you got to build an emergency reserve. Now, back then, Phil, Latinos were probably 65% were unbanked. Didn't even have a checking account, savings account. They did everything in cash. They went to these, places where they would charge them 1 or 2% to cash their paychecks and then did everything in cash. So I realized that I needed to help them open up checking accounts, savings accounts, have money in reserve. When the company came to me and said, "Louis, you're a great financial planner, but you're not making a lot of money opening up bank accounts for some of your clients. Why don't you open up annuities? And it's a win-win for you and for them." And I realized that it wasn't how I was raised, and it wasn't the best thing for me. So I became very disenchanted with the financial planning industry because it was very product driven and I really wanted to make an impact. So, Phil, I quit and I said I would never be a wealth manager or financial planner again. Went to go work for a big CPA firm back in the 80s, late 80s. And they saw that back then CPAs could not sell any products. They could do planning, but could not sell any products. I was one of the first CFPs in the country. And they hired me to come in and do not only get my own CPA license, but at the end of the day, do financial planning for some of the wealthiest people in the country, multimillionaires and billionaires. And I realized, oh my God, if I could do this in my own community and help people out, but at a way discounted price and not have to sell a product, what would that look like? A few years later, I had tragedy strike in my life and I ended up going back to that community and providing that kind of services to them. And since then I've grown, and it's now I'm working with iconic Latin stars, but I continue to help people across the country and give them access to really honest, ethical, competent financial planning advice without having to sell a product if I don't need to.
And many people don't understand that many advisors and planners are conflicted because they're selling products that they're going to make a commission from.
Well, they're pushed, right? It depends. If you're, I don't want to make the industry look bad, but the problem is that with certain type of places that you work for, you have to produce because they're, charging for your desk and you have to sell a product. And sometimes life insurance products with investments have a lot of commission and they sell it like if it was hotcakes. And it's not the best for the family. My job is of not having our clients think about investing for the long term and not the day-to-day trading type of stuff, but for the long term. But I also think about also having clients for the long term. And that's giving them advice that's what's best for them, not what's best for the investment firm.
Do you see any similarities or differences in the kind of mistakes and misconceptions that people have amongst the wealthier and even the not so wealthy people?
The most common mistake that I see is really more mindsets, and the mindsets that they're not earning enough money. And when you see a lot of books written for communities that do not have a lot of money, they focus on budgeting. right? They focus on budgeting. And I actually see that as a big mistake. What I do is I focus on, I know I can't, but if I could help them create more value in themselves to be able to make more money. The other mistake is that they believe that they're never going to have enough and they're just going to have to work until they die. And I have them believe that they can and they save. And so one of the things that I do is I start to create systems and habits for saving. Phil, they can't invest in stocks, right? They can't invest in stocks or in equities if they do not have any savings. It starts there first. And a lot of people are unbanked. I make sure that they start saving first. And then I start teaching them what long-term investing in equities does. But again, long-term. We have things now like Robinhood who have democratized, trading in stocks. But it's been a double-edged sword for communities that have not had a lot of experience, right? They've kind of used those as day trading, and they've actually now, with the market so volatile, have lost a lot of money, and people are scared. So now they have a bad taste in their mouth, and now they don't want to invest for the long term. So the mistakes are that, they don't save, and they're taught to focus on budgeting when they're not taught to focus on creating more value. The other thing is the mistakes are there aren't a lot of people have access. So they're buying insurance products that have cash value when at the beginning, when they're first starting out, they actually just need a term insurance policy. I always believe there is no bad product, whether it's investment or insurance. It's just if you're not using it for the suitability for that person, right?
Over 4 decades, Aberdeen has built deep relationships throughout emerging market economies. And each episode of our Emerging Markets Equity podcast is your chance to eavesdrop on an agenda-setting conversation between me, Nick Robinson, and some of our brightest minds, figuring out the opportunities in key emerging markets. Search for the Emerging Markets Equity podcast from Aberdeen. That's ABRDN, wherever you get your podcasts.
So what part does investing have in financial stability? I mean, obviously that you've got to get it's a big thing with changing the mindset of people to go from working every day to make money to trying to convert that into something that will make money for them, I presume.
Yeah, financial. So I always have these tiers, right? And so the communities that I work with, I always call the tiers at the beginning, the bottom tier is survival, then struggle, then stability, then success, and then significance, right? And a lot of the people that are in the survival mode or in the struggle mode, the goal is to get them into that stability mode. There's a great saying by Henry David Thoreau that said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. While working with communities that lack capital or lack income, I've always said that most people live lives of quiet financial desperation. Financial stability gives people what I call financial dignity. And what does that mean? As an example, with financial stability, you'll have a single mom who, instead of driving a jalopy or an old car that's going to break down and she's driving in the middle of the night, she'll have some kind of car. Financial stability provides medical insurance, right? Financial stability provides a roof over your head without having to worry that if I lose my job, what's going to happen to me and not moving in the car. We're seeing a tremendous amount of homelessness, right? And a big wealth gap. And so investing is key to all of this. The problem is now that we have to allow people to think, or we have to give them the mindset that they can invest, and we need to show them how. And I will share with you, Phil, that I've been doing this for 35 years in these type of communities, and we've had tremendous success. And we've done it by creating these systems or these habits or creating accounts where they're on automatic, right, where they're saving it, because otherwise they would never save. And to be quite honest with you, Phil, I've got clients that are also making millions of dollars, and we still have to save for them. It doesn't matter. It seems like people who just keep making more just keep spending more.
It's always a problem, isn't it? The more you have, the more you want.
That's it.
You talk about those 5 tiers. Is the change in mindset like ratcheted up through those 5 tiers, or does the change in mindset happen and then those other tiers start following from each other?
I've never been asked that question, and thank you for asking that. So let me share you what I do. When I talk to people and I do workshops, I have those tiers written on a board or on a screen. And I ask them, if someone's on the survival mode, What's their mindset? Are they thinking long term or short term? If they have no place to sleep tonight, if they have no food to eat, even if they stepped away from church that day, would they steal to eat and feed their children? What would they do for money to, and they go, oh, they're not even thinking at the end of the week. They're thinking like, what am I going to do today? Okay. What's the mindset in the struggle where you have a job, but you don't know if you have enough money to pay the rent, or you're always talking to the landlord and say, I'll pay you next month, or I'm going to get some money coming in. What's the mindset? Well, maybe it's at a week at a time, but we're still struggling. I've got people from collections calling me because I haven't made the credit card payment, or I haven't made the car payment, or going to get my car impounded. Then I talk about stability and then success. Because even people at success, Phil, I've got a lot of people at success who've come to me and said, Louis, when I thought I had the Mercedes Benz, I'd be happy. When I thought I would get the nice house, I'd be happy. And now that I have everything, I'm still not feeling happy. There's something lacking when they've had the money. And then significance is when they're making enough and they're making a difference. So if I can get people who are in the survival or the struggle mode to talk about what the people's mindsets are at each level, and if I can get them to start thinking at maybe 1 or 2 levels above, and how would they behave, and what would that person have to be, and what kind of behaviors they would have to have. Now, the problem is, it depends on how much of a struggle they're in, right? Sometimes you have to intervene and you got to find them help. But there are people who are in that struggle mode that we want to get them in stability mode that just require a little bit more help and a shift in mindset to get them to there. And then you have to get them to feel or understand that even achieving success, making money for the sake of making money is not going to make them happier. They have to have a purpose or a meaning behind that.
Have you got a case study or two that you could share with listeners?
Well, case study in the sense of what I will share with you, that I've had people who've gone through divorce and they've had single moms and they've been in this struggle mode because the dad's not paying the child support, right? And they've never had any money. And they said, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. We still have gone to online where they work and connected them and put $10 a month away in their 401k. We've opened up bank accounts where we're doing, $10 a month in that savings plan. And we meet with them, and as we go through 6 months, okay, now you had $60, but let me tell you, when was the last time you had $60 in a savings account? And they'll tell me it's been 2 or 3 years. Or tell me when you had money in your retirement plan. I've never had money in retirement plan. I know that you're still living paycheck to paycheck. Right. Phil, people are listening to us. An analogy is, you talk to people who have a car that's breaking down. They can't make an extra car payment, but eventually the car just breaks down so bad that it's not even worth fixing. They go to the car dealer, and the next day they come out with a lease or they come out with a car purchase, and all of a sudden they're making the car payment that they didn't have enough money to make the car payment before. And so what I'm saying is that somehow we always are able to prioritize or able to do what needs to be done. And so sometimes we do that. The other thing times is I sit down and I'll take a look at what they're spending the money on and how we can prioritize it differently. Or I will teach them concepts on how to make more money. Here's one quick concept that I teach people. So I would love for you to go to your boss or the person responsible for giving you a raise tomorrow and ask them, I really would like to provide more for my family, and I'd like to earn more income. I'm not asking you for a raise, but what I'd love to do is I'd like to ask you is, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What kind of person do I need to become to move at the next level where I'm at so I can earn more money? Because if they knew that, they would be doing it already, but they don't have a plan for earning more money. I will share with you that 99% of the time they come back and they say, I have a plan. And most of them are earning more money within 6 to 9 months. There are times when the boss will tell them, or their manager says, I don't even, they want to make this kind of a raise. I don't even make that. Well, it's better for you to find out now that you're in a place that's not going to pay you more, so you can go gain what I call cash, knowledge, abilities, skills, and habits to move to another job where there will be more value for you and they'll pay you better. So we've got to teach these kind of concepts. They're very simple concepts, and when you hear them, it sounds like common sense, but nobody's doing that.
You referred a few moments ago to the kind of new investing products like Robinhood that are allowing people to invest directly themselves. And another guest referred to that as being like getting the keys to the Ferrari without even having your L plates on your Kia, and there's a bottle of whiskey on the passenger seat.
Going to Vegas, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, what I always try and say to people is that, okay, you can invest with a very, very small amount of money, but don't think of it as a sports betting app. Think of it as an educational app and to educate yourself. Would you agree with using it that way?
Listen, absolutely. Again, these type of apps weren't around, and most people would never have access to investing or wouldn't even know how to invest, right? It's on your phone. There's no excuse for not being able to invest these days.
There's no friction at all.
There's no excuse for you to buy one share of Amazon at a fractional share price, right? The what needs behind that, though, is the context of what investing really is. Because let me just share with you that if you go into poor communities, when you see that there's a lotto and let's just say the lotto right now is at $100 million, the lines are out the door at the liquor stores, the lines are out the door at the convenience stores. Everybody's buying a ticket. And so they think that that's their only chance of building wealth. And you and I know, and in fact, I actually know somebody who won $11 million and after whatever taxes had $7 million and literally lost it within 3 years. I mean, this is a true story. And so we need to have some kind of education of how investing really works. People think that investing in the stock market is gambling. It is absolutely not. But when they're day trading and it does become like gambling, right? And so at the end of the day, it's a wonderful tool. We just have to provide a lot more education behind it. And they treat it like a lotto ticket, to be quite honest with you.
And these days, there's so much more financial advice available in podcasts, blogs, videos on YouTube and so forth. Can this be a good thing or a bad thing?
It is a great thing, but let me share with you the problem that I have now with all the information. When I left the big firm out of Newport Beach, California, it was Kenneth Leventhal, and I went back to East LA to help the poor. There was no internet then. It was just starting. We were just getting there. And people said, the reason why people are poor is there's a lack of financial literacy. That's why I've written 5 books. And I will share with you now, with so much information, the wealth gap, especially in the United States, has gotten larger. And so now with all the information, why has that wealth gap there's so much wonderful, great information from great organizations out there. I don't know if there's too much information now. But the problem is the right information is available to you at the great university of Google, right? Or whatever you're using. And you have to know to go to which organizations are giving you consumer-friendly information. You have to be careful. Sometimes when you go with individual advisors, let's say I'm an individual advisor and I'm giving information, you have to be careful about where their intentions are and if they're also selling a product or what they're trying to do. So I love to go to more of the government kind of organizations, the FINRA, the SEC, SEC site, where they're giving you consumer-friendly information without having any intentions to sell a product behind it.
Can you suggest for listeners, when we're talking about going to Dr. Google and the University of Google, what they should be searching for? Is it something like long-term investing or passive investing? Any terms that you would suggest people put in their search engine?
How do I start to invest? Simple as that. How do I start to invest? Investopedia has tremendous amount of information. How do I know where to invest? How do I invest for college funding for my children? I mean, it's asking the question repeatedly a few times and seeing what comes up. And then you'll see right away, right at the very top, it says, this is an ad. This is an ad. This is an ad. So you kind of go down a few steps below and look for information that, just be very careful with people who are out there telling you how wonderful something is and how great and grand something is. Again, I go back to when people tell me, right now, Louis, I'm invested, I'm nervous, the accounts are down. I go, well, if you're invested in equities, they're supposed to be down, right? If you had money invested with Madoff, your accounts would not be down in a down market. There's something to worry about, right? So you have to know how to work. As far as I see it, Phil, there's only really 3 types of investments in the whole world. There's cash, fixed, and equity. And you have to teach them how they work and what they're for. And I'll ask somebody, I'm going to teach you how to be a financial planner. Equity investments are volatile. You put $1 in, you don't know what's going to be worth tomorrow. It could be real estate. It could be companies, stocks. Fixed investments are like bonds or loans where, you lend somebody money and they lock it in for a certain time period and you're going to get that. But, you're subject to interest rate risk, and then cash is cash. And most banks here were paying prior to the inflation 0.01%, right? 1/10 of 1%. But I would ask them, what's the goal and what's the time horizon? And if, to be quite honest, Phil, I don't even think the goal matters. It's the time horizon. If somebody tells us, I'm going to need that money within the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to put it in cash. You're going to put it in a short-term CD. You're going to put it in cash. I need money for my kid's education fund. Great. How old is your kid? Right? Because if I tell you, Phil, my kid's 17 years old, will go to college in the next 6 months, or I tell you my child is a year old, it's going to be a completely different portfolio for that child, right? The same thing when somebody says, I need money. I need to retire. Where should I invest it? Should I invest it in ETFs? Should I invest it in cash? How old are you and when do you plan to retire? What's our time horizon? And so it goes back to asking those type of questions. If you have anybody come to you and talk to you about a product first before they're asking you how old are you, or how much time do you have for the investment? Does it need to be liquid or not? What's your risk tolerance? Have you ever been in these type of investments? Or they should teach you that if you've never invested in equities, the markets are supposed to be down at certain periods. It's not going to be a smooth right up. And you need to be comfortable. And maybe if you have extra cash when the markets are down, like at this time, do we put more money in? So I think we need to be educated from that perspective. And I think there are a lot of wonderful people out there giving great advice, but I also think that the industry is still at a point where we're very product driven instead of very people driven.
One of the traditional ways of earning a greater income is education, and young people go to college, obviously, to get skills and to make a lot more money. But then it's a double-edged sword with the debt then hanging over their head for many years. How would you talk to a young person approaching this kind of situation?
We have these conversations all the time, and I will share with you that if you talk to a lot of college counselors, you're going to see a lot of people who are in college paying a lot of money, who are undecided as to what they're going to study. And so it's more of looking at also their career path long term. There are some kids that definitely know. I mean, since they were 11 years old, what they were going to do. I was going to be a doctor since I was 11 years old. Go for it. You're going to make a lot of money, but it's a lot of work, right? It's 8-9 years of college, and it's a tremendous amount of effort and work. But if you're going to do it, that's fine. If you're undecided and don't know, that's why community colleges have been a great resource for a lot of people. It's been a big strategy where you go get your general courses for literally nothing these days, and then you transfer. If people don't have an idea of what they want to do, I'll tell them, why don't you go do a lot of internships and don't even start college for a while until you finally decide what you really love and what's your passion. And then you'll find that there are some careers that don't require college to make a lot of money if that's what you're meant to do. And so it just depends. You have to take a look at every person individually. But again, if somebody wants to go and they've always wanted to be a doctor, then I don't let money interfere that. We're going to figure out a way for them to get the money, whether it's grants, scholarships, loans. Sometimes they're not even aware of what grants are or scholarships. And there's a lot of help out there, but you have to look for it. When there's a will, there's a way.
So tell us about Opportunity Knocks, the TV show. How's that been? And I know we can't do any we have no spoiler alerts, okay?
No spoiler alerts, but I will share with you that I'm doing this show called Opportunity Knocks. It will be shown throughout the country on PBS. And it's, as we know, it was launching in November. And so it's with Patrice Washington and Gene Chatsky. Gene Chatsky has been on NBC Today show for many, many years. And the goal is to show America that if you are having financial struggles or challenges, there are resources out there available to help you. And so this is a wonderful show that it's not about the coaches, but there's a team of people around 6 families that will help guide, coach, teach, change mindsets, and push them and guide them to the right resources to change their lives. One of the families that I had was a single mother with 5 children who had not paid her home mortgage in 10 months because she taught art classes at home. When COVID came in, nobody came in, right? There couldn't be any art classes, and she was not making enough money that where she can teach these classes off the internet. And so started, really spiraling downward and had some health issues as well. And we stepped in to help her. But what people will see is that there are so many resources available for them if they're in debt, they have some financial problems. And some of them were not even financial problems. They were problems of opportunities. Do I stay here as a teacher or I have an opportunity to move to Austin, Texas and make more money and change the whole life and maybe take some risk? And they got guidance, career guidance there as well. So it's a wonderful show that I think is going to show a lot of people that if they can do it, if the people on television can do it, they can do it themselves. And it's not just advice. We actually guide them to the website, opportunityknocks.net. And there's an opportunity finder there where they can put in what kind of problem they have. And it'll guide them for people in their community at nearly almost, no expense whatsoever. So that's what we're trying to do.
So some of the major artists, and mainly Latino and Latina artists that you represent, can you share some of those names?
Yeah, I've been working for the longest time. If you'll see a gentleman named Nicky Jam, who was born in Boston in the United States and moved to Puerto Rico and then went through some severe difficulties, hardships, and then he turned back his whole entire career and is doing extremely well. He's done movies in the U.S. And I've got Mao and Ricky and Gerardo Ortiz. And I worked for the Rivera family for the longest time. So, I can continue and give you a list of clients. And what we do for them is, we sit down and we help them pay their bills and do their tax returns and guide them with their investments and help them vet out private equity opportunities for them. Really kind of a family office. And again, it's a very boutique firm. Billboard magazine has put us in the top business managers list for the last 6 years running. And so we're very proud of the work that we're doing. And we're basically creating that wealth and business management. So that's the type of clients that I have.
Yeah. And I guess that's part of the dream, isn't it? That at some stage, some people can achieve that kind of financial success.
Phil, I will share with you that one of the things that being so close into the entertainment industry and dealing with a lot of executives in the entertainment industry is that you realize there's a lot of great talent out there. But the people who don't give up, the people who have a lot of heart, eventually make it, right? Some of these stars lived in their cars. That's the beauty of the clients that I have is that they also come from families that did not have a lot of education and didn't have a lot of money, and they did a lot of struggle. So once they make money, most of them, not all of them, but most of them really appreciate the money that they've made, and they really want to take care of it. Right. And so I love that they're really involved with their finances. I have a young group, 2 young kids named Mao and Ricky. They're not that young, but they're young. And they are really invested in time. I meet with them and talk about private equity, about the stock market, about their retirement plans. And I have never seen any 20-year-olds that sit me down and want to learn as much as possible. And I love that. I love that. Again, people who have come from nothing. And so if they can do it, anybody can do it. Now, music is different, right? It's a little bit of luck. It's the same thing with actors. Not a lot of people are working. But I also have people from the barrios that I've had for 25, 30 years, people who were school teachers and never made more than $40,000 a year and have over $1 million in their retirement accounts. And again, it's done through time. It's done through common sense investing. We don't need to complicate stuff. This is not really, it's not that complicated what we do. I think the biggest goal is to get them just to be consistent investors, right?
A friend of mine who works in the music industry was having a dinner with an accountant who worked with Elton John when Elton John, suddenly his party years were over and he had to get his finances together. And on the books, there were 4 Rolls Royces, but they could only find 3 of them. And it took them about 5 years to find one of the rollers sitting in the long-term car park at Heathrow Airport with no air in the tyres.
That's when you know you've got a lot of money, Bill. That's when you know you get a lot of money, when you can't. Yeah. So my clients are not that there yet, but right now what I'm seeing, Phil, just is that a lot of people are selling catalogs, a lot of hedge funds. in the investment world are buying music catalogs from these artists.
That's right.
And
yeah.
a lot of these artists are getting big lump sums. I've got some clients that, are getting $25-30 million from selling their catalogs. And I guess that all started because interest rates have gone down, that they were looking to diversify the portfolios. And so they saw that the streaming, the music royalties coming from all the streaming was a great income.
Yeah, they're kind of like a long-term bond.
Like a long-term bond. And they were being, where then prior they used to sell some of these catalogs at 8, 9, 10 times multiple. They're now going for 17, 18 times multiple.
I believe there's ETFs now that are offering exposure to some of these. You can get exposure to Bob Dylan's catalogue and David Bowie's catalogue. And David Bowie really was one of the first to do this. I think it was even back in the late 80s where he sold his catalogue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting to think of as an income stream, I think.
It is, and it's interesting to see some of these 30-year-olds selling catalogs for 40, 50 million. And when we're sitting there, we have to take into the capital gains taxes, but we got to say, okay, what do we do to make sure that we don't run out of this money? Because this was your future income stream that you've just sold now, and now we've got to invest it wisely. And so there's a lot of time in planning what we're going to do with that money and make it grow as well.
I got to say, I think $300 million for the Bob Dylan catalogue is so cheap that he got for that. But I guess at his age, he doesn't need too much money to live out his days.
Absolutely. Phil, since we're kind of off a little bit on the subject, so what do you, at Stocks for Beginners, what do you actually teach on your podcast? What are you teaching the listeners?
I'm not so much teaching. I mean, I don't see myself as a teacher. I feel like I'm channeling my guests and their knowledge and their information. One of my guests a long time ago said, listen to the words. You just got to listen to the words. So what I'm trying to do is expose listeners to people who have expertise in this industry and who, by listening to the words, will pick up really what I am trying to say is that long term, you want to be invested for the long term. You want to do it with as little risk as possible and to think about what your goals are in the future and not think that you're going to make, walking into the stock market today, that you're going to make a lot of money straight off the bat. Yeah, so that's basically where I'm coming from, yeah.
So are you a musician as well?
I've got a bit.
I see a guitar. I see a guitar behind you.
I wouldn't call myself a musician as such, but I do like playing, and I actually play all the themes on my podcasts. I take copyright very seriously. And
no kidding, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I just always feel like I like to get the vibe and that right. Oh,
that's fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lewis, for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure, and it's not often where I get interviewed as well by my guests.
Phil, it's my pleasure, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lewis. If you found this podcast helpful, please tell a friend, especially if it's someone who needs to start thinking about investing for their future. You'll be helping them and helping me to keep this show on the road.
Stocks for Beginners is for information and educational purposes only. It isn't financial advice, and you shouldn't buy or sell any investments based on what you've heard here. Any opinion or commentary is the view of the speaker only, not Stocks for Beginners. This podcast doesn't replace professional advice regarding your personal financial needs, circumstances, or current situation.
And thank you for listening to my podcast.
Over 4 decades, Aberdeen has built deep relationships throughout emerging market economies. And each episode of our Emerging Markets Equity podcast is your chance to eavesdrop on an agenda-setting conversation between me, Nick Robinson, and some of our brightest minds, figuring out the opportunities in key emerging markets. Search for the Emerging Markets Equity podcast from Aberdeen. That's ABRDN, wherever you get your podcasts.